It's 4 p.m. We're going to call the meeting of the Charter Revision Commission to order. First item is, I see that all 5 of us are here, so we're not going to take attendance, but because all 5 are here, would be the approval of the minutes of November 15th. They were circulated to everyone?
Mr. Chair, I would move to approve the minutes of the meeting of November 15 of the Charter Revision Commission.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. On the old business, we have Charter Article 2, City Council, with 2 items there. And then, just wondering, does anyone have a desire to go forward with having a ballot item drafted for those items that we could vote on at the future, or do you see not going forward with them? Does anyone want to go forward with having those drafted? Okay, then I think we're going to drop those as old business, and they're going to be behind us. On B, Charter Article 3, Mayor, item 3 on there, the election by majority was presented. Does anyone want to proceed with having a ballot measure drafted? Okay. Hearing none, that will be dropped as well. Then we're on to new business. Article 7. Article 7 is general provisions. Is there anything that anyone would like to discuss on Article 7? Article 8, Charter Amendment, the process of amending the Charter. Does anyone see anything there that they would like to change? And Article 9, transition separability provision.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I would like to look at section 9.05, F, salary of mayor and council members.
Okay.
As a formal council member, this was something that was discussed on a number of occasions as far as both the council member and the mayor's salary. As you see in this provision, the mayor's salary was established in the amount of $75,000 in 1995. Today, it's $122,387. Council members receive an annual salary in the amount of 15% of the mayor's salary, and so today that is $18,358, with no delineation between what a member of the council or a member of leadership makes. I'd like to share with you the difference between 1995 and 2017. In 1995, there were 898 employees of the city. Today, there are 1,234 members. The population of Sioux Falls was 112,500. Today, it's 178,500. As far as land mass, back in 1995, the city was 49 square miles. Today, it's 82 square miles. The city budget has gone from $155 million to $457 million. In the presentation that was made to us by Mr. Froelich and Mr. Kirby, I understand the intent of what the provisions were back when this was all put together. But I'd like to share with you also the difference in what a county commissioner makes compared to a city council member. Today, a non-chair county commissioner makes $27,019 approximately, and the chair makes approximately $1,000 more, $28,019. I would contend that the work of a city council member is not any less than what a county commissioner does. The difference being that the county commission can set their salaries themselves, where it is in charter the salaries of both the mayor and the council and how it's determined. And I guess that I feel that it is not comparable to what it would be made in the private sector, which is how salaries for many of the city employees and county employees is determined. So I would like to take a look at that.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I definitely understand why this would be brought forward. I think it makes sense for there to be hefty consideration given to this. A lot of the presentations that have been made so far at the last several meetings of this commission, I think, express a strong need for this. I would point out, and I'd invite the city attorney's office to weigh in on this, but the city council has a much greater opportunity to conduct an in-depth study of this issue and then to receive evidence to figure out specific solutions, how much of an increase would be merited, what the impact would be fiscally to the city of Sioux Falls, etc. And then they could propose from the city council an amendment to the charter under section, we just talked about it, 8.01b. They are not prohibited from recommending an amendment to section 9.05f, salary of mayor and council members. So I do think it's a worthwhile discussion. At this point, I would say that the Charter Revision Commission, in my opinion, is not in a position to make an in-depth study of this issue sufficient to do justice to the question. I would propose the City Council take up this question and have that discussion, both for the mayor and for the City Council, and then they can come forward with an amendment to that section of the charter.
Mr. Chair, I guess I would have no problem with that, but also if I know that we're at the end of this term of our responsibility, but it's something that I would like, if the council is not willing or able. I have to say that this was a discussion when I was a city council member, and we all said we would do something about it after we were off the council. But it is something that I would like us to keep on our docket then in the future, looking at maybe a different proposal as far as how it is determined. I just see a large disparity in what a council member makes compared to a county commissioner.
Okay. And I guess from my perspective, as I look at that, it would be also on the mayor, that at 122, that may be understated as to what it would be in most other sectors for that responsibility as a full-time job. And so as you were going through that, I was trying to come up with, okay, what are some fixes? But I said, I don't know, how that all goes. For instance, one of the items would be the mayor's salary could be adjusted, and that may take care of the council members right there. And but the other one is if there wants to be a differentiation on time commitment and workload between leadership and non-leadership, it's an item that is there. And I guess the difficulty I have is I don't feel like I have the tools to work with the numbers on it as to where it should be. But it does make sense that after 22 years, adjusting only for inflation, it may not be, those amounts may not be appropriate. And I think when you talk about county commissioners as to what that would be, it's an item that is there. And it'd be interesting if we could get some people who could come up with a scenario or a recommendation for that.
Mr. Chair, just one question for Mr. Brown. What's the deadline for the City Council under Charter Section 8.01B? If they wanted to propose this amendment to the Charter or any other amendments to the Charter, what would their deadline be to make that proposal for it to go on the ballot in April?
February 9th.
Thank you.
So at this point, would you like to make a motion, or should we just use this as information?
For you.
I don't, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure what kind of motion to make if we're throwing it into the hands of the City Council. I guess that it would be more of a resolution that we ask that they go forward and look at both of these items, unless there are some city councilors in the audience that would like to speak to this, or if, and also, Mr. Froelich, since you are in the audience today, if you have any comment, we would appreciate it also.
Time for public input.
Thank you. My name is Greg Neitzert, City Councilor. I am not going to advocate one way or another on what our pay should be. I'll just say we work a lot. I would say that could we do it technically, but the reality is, and I think the former counselor would probably understand this, politically, it's going to be difficult to want to vote yourself a pay increase. Let's just be let's just be very upfront. Now, maybe there's a couple of counselors who are, term limiting out that may want to take a look at that, but proposing to raise your own pay and or voting for it is, I don't know that I would be running to support that. Let's just put it that way. Whether or not I thought I deserved it or not, it's just the optics are not great. I think it's something that it would probably be better if it was done by an independent body and let the people decide. And but I do understand that, it'd be nice if there was some sort of, a framework of, like what is the median out there? What's the right number? Rather than just stabbing in the dark and picking. Like in my company, we're always looking at the industry medians for all of our salaries, and that's how we adjust every year. We go out and we look at all of the partner companies, and we kind of look and see and do a bit of a survey and find out where that median is, and then your pay is adjusted not just based on performance, but also if you're starting to get too far out of line. If you start dropping too far below that median and you're doing a good job, you're going to get a pretty good raise because they know that they're starting to get some risk that you're not going to want to work there anymore because you could go make $20,000 more working somewhere else. On the other hand, if you're well above the median, you might just get an inflationary increase. So you're always wanting to look at that, and there are corrections. I mean, I've been with my company for 17 years, and there's been a few times where they've had to make some pretty good corrections where we just had a lot of years where we just didn't have much of a pay increase because we were struggling, and the rest of the industry moved, and then they had they had to make adjustments because they saw that our pay was getting to where there was a very high risk that higher performers were going to leave, so they had to make that correction to get us to where we needed to be. So, but I guess that's the only thing I would point out. I don't want to advocate either way. I'm just saying that just the reality is that I don't think any politician wants to vote themselves a pay increase. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I would agree with what Greg just said. That was a reason that some of us in discussing it were waiting until we were out of office to bring this forward.
Dale Froelich from Sioux Falls. I would make a couple comments. First of all, I'm sensitive to the fact that it's been 20 plus years and things do change. So maybe a review is needed to set that salary. A couple of philosophical things that I would urge this body and eventually the city to consider. Even back in 1996, when we set that original salary for the mayor of $75,000, we knew that it was below market for the amount of responsibility and time involved. We set it below market because we felt that there was a combination of duties involved in the mayor's position. One, the work of the mayor, the employment of the mayor, certainly that person needs to be paid for his time and services. But we also felt that there was a public service aspect of being mayor. And we felt that people would step forward for the honor of being a mayor and for the chance to be a strong voice in our community in form of leadership. And so the very privilege of being a mayor or a city council member perhaps had some worth in the market, apart from what you might see in a private enterprise. All that being said, I would echo what Greg just said. We know that in the private sector, there are many resources that an institutional body can look at for salary comparisons. For example, I have just recently sat on the search committee for the new chamber leadership, and I know there will be a search committee for the new Sioux Falls Development Foundation leadership. In both those cases, the institutions will hire national search firms, and they will make they will be told by those search firms what are the going ranges for salaries in our region. What is a fair salary? What is the high and the low? What's the median? And certainly South Dakota and Sioux Falls needs to be within that range of respectability and responsibility. You know, most salary positions in the Dakotas are actually behind, say, a nationwide median. But we need to be competitive to attract the proper talent for these positions. And so in that respect, I would urge the city council to maybe hire that kind of independent voice, sort of an HR look at the matter, to really advise them. We do hire outside experts on a number of other subjects, and I think outside experts bring a lot to bear on this question. And they are without conflict. They're experts in the field, and they have a lot of data and resources available to them. So point one, there's a difference between an employee and an elected official. Point two, there's the ability to hire outside expertise, which I would urge the city council to do. And I would urge them to take a reasonable amount of time to accomplish that and maybe bring such a recommendation forward for consideration. And then the third thing that I would point out to Greg's comment is that I would never recommend a sitting elected official to change their own salary. I would recommend that they make a recommendation that future salaries be changed for people that might get elected after the change becomes effective. In that way, if the voters approve that salary range, the voters can also know as they elect their next official, that would be the expected salary. I think it's difficult for existing elected officials from a political point of view to recommend their own increase because they were elected, they initially stood up and took that position at the initial salary, and they were elected by the citizens for that salary. And I think any kind of recommendation for future changes should be made effective in the future. So those are my comments.
Could I ask Mr. Chair a question? Mr. Froelich, how does the county work it? Do they vote on their own salary increases? When I did my research into it, you know, it was the first meeting in January it was set. Can you, as your past,
Well, I did work 5 years as an administrative assistant to the county commission, but that was 30-some years ago. I don't remember exactly, but the memory I would give you right now is that we did take it up at the beginning of the year, and we did make those decisions based on what was being paid by other jurisdictions in our region, not just in South Dakota, but in other parts of the field. I guess maybe one final point that I would make is that when the charter was initially drafted, the reason why the council positions were designated for 15% of the mayor's salary was that we clearly wanted to send a message that the mayor's position was a full-time position. The council members were expected to be part-time positions. And we know that there, certainly at the county, there's a bit of distinction for leadership positions versus non-leadership council members. But I would urge that the aspect of part-time work be honored and carried forward, because I really do think that serves the city in the best manner. So,
thank you.
Mr. Chair, a couple of questions, if I could, and these are going to go to the city attorney's office, I think, and hopefully you can help Mr. Brown with that. First of all, would there be any difference in how an amendment initiated by the council would appear on the ballot versus an amendment coming from this body?
It would probably indicate where it came from, but other than that, no. But I would ask Tom if he knew for sure.
I would have to do some research on that.
No problem.
Because we haven't had one, to my knowledge, from the council.
Does this Charter Revision Commission have any ability or power under the ordinance that created this commission to commission a study or a task force or some other analysis of major issues like increasing salaries of the mayor and the city council members, or would that be something where we would have to basically defer to the council to take that step?
Well, I think this body could commission a voluntary task force, but you don't have funds to go out and purchase things or retain expertise. But you certainly have the ability to make your own rules and how you make decisions.
That answers my next question, which was about experts. I understand that we do not have the ability to hire those. But I'm assuming that if we came to a final decision on some kind of increase to salaries that would go into Article 9, would we be able to draft any amendment to the charter to have delayed implementation, either for a date in the future or until, you know, basically saying the mayor and any member sitting on the city council as of the date of this amendment to the charter will not be eligible for the increase in salary during their then current term, something like that?
Yeah, I don't know of any restriction that would prohibit you from doing that.
All right.
From my perspective, it looks like I think we could draft it for, as to how that would be, that the effective date would be for people elected after the approval by the voters. I mean, if we wanted to, I think we could draft it that way. But I think the difficulty we have right now is we're coming to the end of our work. So maybe next time we should start at Article 9 and work backwards, 987.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would defer to Commissioner Aguilar on this option. But if this commission would like to be in the position of maybe forming some kind of voluntary task force that would then ask the council for an expert to be hired, or something like that going forward, my thought would be that the goal is when this commission begins meeting in 2019. I know it delays it by 2 years, unfortunately. But when we start meeting in 2019, all of the materials, reports, presentations from that task force and the expert, hopefully hired by the City Council, would be available for the commission that's seated and begins meeting in 2019.
Mr. Chair, I do believe we do have to meet at least once in 2018. So if we don't meet in January, as we did in 16, I believe, we will have to meet in 18.
Mr. Chair.
Okay. We'll continue the public input. And
Okay, I'm sorry.
open
I
discussion here.
wanted to make a suggestion. And I like what you're hearing, or what I'm hearing here, not because I think I need more pay, because I don't, but I think it will bring some more people to the table that would maybe not think about being part of city council and city government. And I also want to say that I definitely feel that leadership needs a different pay scale than the council, because they put in substantially more hours and have substantially more responsibilities than the regular council. If you're looking for a complete HR workup of what's happening for councilors and commissioners and that kind of thing, yeah, you're going to have to hire somebody who has all that experience. If what you're looking for, though, I think is someone to do research into what our cities around the Sioux Falls area, the people that we look at when we compare ourselves and what happens, the Rochesters, the Fargos, the Lincolns, the Des Moines, those kind of things. We have someone on staff, our budget analyst, Mr. Bixler, that could have that put together for you fairly quickly. And he would obviously be would be very unattached, let's put it that way, because that's his job. That's what we ask him to do. So I think, without going too far out of line, I think, and I just visited with him, he says, I'm thinking about it as we were talking, about putting something like that together for you for your next meeting, and that might help with the decision of whether you should go forward now or whether you should wait 2 years and do it at that time. Just an idea for you. And that would not have a cost to this group or to the city council budget.
Mr. Chair, I think that would give us a basis of where we're going, because not only do we need to know where we sit within the region, but we also have to look at the mechanism, how it's going to go forward, and whether we want to continue with the 15% of the mayors if we were to make a charter change. So, but that would at least give us some basic information where to go. You know, you were asking for a motion. Well, maybe if we had a little more information, because my comparison is only that between the city and the county.
Okay. So I've kind of blended here between public input and open discussion. But in our open discussion, as we sit right now, we do not have any amendments to take forward. And so we had scheduled a meeting for December 20th and January 3rd?
I don't know if we actually decided on a January meeting yet.
Not yet. So, and I don't know if December 20th, if we're to go forward with December 20th, if we could have this information by that time, if that is too harried.
David Bixler, budget analyst for the City Council. I could certainly get some information together regarding some of the communities that we currently benchmark against, and just for your review, and what the scales are. I don't see a problem with that.
Mr. Chair, could we ask that in the information that you bring forward also the type of government it is, and if it's part-time council, full-time mayor, or has a city manager? We would need all of that information
Certainly.
in order to make a decision.
Okay.
I think the city already has many communities that they already use to benchmark, and I think we could just take those and look at the analysis from that list.
But your expectation is, I think, from what I'm hearing from this, is that if we were to review this, the adjustment would be upwards and not downwards.
Mr. Chair, yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure that that's, would be the item. But, so the question would be is, if we were to have this information, we could schedule a meeting for December 20th, and that would be the one item on the agenda. Would people be in agreement with that? So we will set a meeting for December 20th, and we'll look forward to a report. And even if we could have it sometimes ahead of time, and we can look at structures as to how this could be on, because I would imagine this will be the mayor and all council.
Yes.
And then with leadership, we've heard about those people think leadership differential. But we can start working on some things as to what would be there.
Mr. Chair, I definitely think that sounds like a good idea. It allows us to continue the discussion. What I would renew my comments from before. I think it's going to be very difficult to get the information pulled together. I know that the city budget office will do a fantastic job of getting that, but then also to know that it's enough information and to make a decision and then to draft a formal amendment to the charter all in time for the upcoming election in April. But I think I'm fine with the concept. Was already planning on a December 20 meeting, and.
But I think we could look at this and say that there may not be sufficient time to get there, but at least if we could get a start on it. But who knows? Maybe we can get to a point where it can be there. But I would guess that if that was our only amendment, there may be people in the community discussing the amendment to the city charter. So then what we would do is we would go forward December 20th. The one item on the agenda will be the old business would be, I've closed my book. What section was that? Section 9. 9.05F will be the one discussion on December 20th. Is there anything else that anyone would like to discuss? Thank you for your offer, and we wish you well in the next 2 weeks.
All right, thank you.
Any other items? If not, we stand adjourned.